So, what's your favorite thing about Pride Month?
My favorite thing about Pride Month is music.
Really?
Yeah. Other than the weather,
Uh-huh.
music this time of the year is usually very upbeat dance music. I like all kinds of music, but the music this particular month is very pop,
Yes,
dance,
yes,
electro.
yes. Upbeat, danceable, exciting. Yeah, I feel like it's also interesting because Pride is always the beginning of summer.
Yes.
So it's like, all right, get ready for the heat, get ready for the music, the dancing, and of course, all the Pride festivities that happen outside are super fun to me, because I prefer to be outside and do stuff during the day. I
Yeah.
think at nighttime I want to be home and like relaxing after the dancing and whatever we've done throughout the day, especially in the summer, we want to take advantage of all that sun.
Here in Florida, sometimes it gets dark around 9,
Yeah,
9:30,
crazy.
and we try to take advantage as most as we can.
Yeah. And so again, June is like the beginning of, I think, our favorite time of the year as well,
Yeah.
because we spend the majority of the time again outside and getting to go on adventures, whether it's still here in Florida or do a road trip somewhere. So I'm excited for this Pride Month. We're
I
gonna go to
know.
New York City. We're gonna maybe do Nashville because we want to see Tinashe. Remember, she's gonna perform there, so
Yes.
we're looking into that. But really also getting to go to other prides in other cities and meet new people and kind of see what their gay communities are like is always super fun too. So
And it's our favorite time to visit other cities too, because it's not as cold. And
yes.
unfortunately, we are not big fans of cold weather.
No, we like the heat. We
Yeah.
again, a lot of people who come to Florida when we say, "Oh, you should visit," they're like, "Oh, it's too humid, it's too muggy, it's too hot." We love check, check,
Yeah.
check.
You're
Love,
from
love, love.
Florida, born and raised. I'm from Brazil. There's not a hotter place than Brazil. So,
Yeah, so again, summer is our time to shine. So we'll see what Pride has in store for us this year. What's your favorite part of Pride? I'd love to hear what their comments are, what they enjoy the most about it. Pride Month is such a great time to reflect on how far we've come, how
yeah.
far we need to go.
I actually think Pride Month should be all year round.
I
I actually think
agree.
it should be at least one weekend out of every month should be
Yeah,
the Pride weekend.
I
Because
agree.
why just June? It's so
Mhm.
fast.
Yeah.
And we want more Pride, we want more gay, queer music out there. We want
Yeah.
more movies about being queer and being gay. We want more representation throughout all year round.
Yeah, I agree. Can definitely use some more representation. And speaking of representation,
What are we talking about today?
we're talking about how music can help navigate us, especially when we're younger, and feeling maybe more isolated, coming
Yeah.
into our queerness or sexuality or body or the world around us, and how music can kind of guide us into some of those uncomfortable conversations, uncomfortable feelings,
I love that.
and help us kind of digest the world around us, especially when we're young gay guys trying
Yeah.
to figure things out, don't
Yes.
necessarily have people to talk to, and want to talk about our own experiences. For me, as you can see, I'm wearing a Britney Spears t-shirt today because this was actually the first artist that I purchased an album of. I think it was 1999.
Wow.
I remember going to the store and getting my first Walkman and my first CD of her. Well, I had played with CDs before. My mom had CDs, and she grew up with me. At least I grew up listening to her CDs. She listened to a lot of Toni Braxton,
Wow.
Celine Dion, Janet Jackson. We have a song together that we used to listen to a lot. It's "I Love You Always Forever"
That's a good
by, I
song.
forget who it's by. Y'all know who it is. I do too. I just can't think of it right now. But we had all those sort of female pop infusions happening from my
Late
mom's
90s.
influence on me. And so when Britney came out, it was like, youth, schoolgirl outfit. I was also, going to be going to private school,
Yes.
so I kind of aligned with that as well. And this also sort of young female who was confronting some, at least in my head, feelings that I was also experiencing. My loneliness is killing me. That literally defines me at 9 years old, 10 years old. Kind of coming into this new version of who I was, this kind of pre-pubescent, overwhelming period of like trying to figure out where I belong. And what I did feel was alone. I was an only child, gay in the South, didn't even know what I was really, who I was or what gay meant, but those lyrics touched with me so hard from the beginning. Do you remember having an experience like that with a particular artist or music?
I remember growing up, I was very young. I had this DVD, the music DVD of Celine Dion and Britney
Oh,
Spears.
that's funny.
Yeah, and actually, my dad, who didn't speak any English, he liked Cher and Celine Dion,
Yeah.
specifically those two. And I remember growing up very young in the late 90s. I remember Britney Spears came out and I was obsessed right from the start. I was
Hmm.
probably 5, 6 when she came out with her first song. And I remember since the beginning, I was already obsessed with her. It's funny, growing up in different cultures,
Right.
different countries, we have a very similar experience and a very similar diva because
Hmm.
Britney Spears was my diva for a long time growing up, and I was obsessed with her. As at that age, I wanted to be like her, I wanted to dance like her, I wanted to wear skirts like Britney did, and being so uh power
Yeah.
girl and fierce.
Yeah, it was almost like she was like claiming her sexual identity kind of from the beginning, from that
Yeah.
video, the iconic schoolgirl outfit, which, the skirt was a little short, the
Yeah.
shirt was a little unbuttoned, and it just felt like she was really embracing that side of herself, which as a young female, I think can be kind of a difficult, path to
Mm-hmm.
follow. And there's definitely a lot of landmines placed
Right.
because society is so ready to jump on you and pounce on how you are embracing yourself, especially in that age, 17, 18, 19. You don't know what's going on. Your hormones are raging, but you do want to feel empowered by
Right.
your physical appearance and who you are. And so seeing her kind of do that, granted, she was much older than me at like 9 or 10, I kind of felt more secure and inspired that at least I could maybe grab onto some of that
Yeah.
energy and use it to get through some of those tough
Isn't
times.
it interesting how she's an inspiration for many of us queer people? And
Yes,
also, she's a female, and we gay men are obsessed with her. And not just Britney Spears, obviously, but all
right,
the other, many others that came around that time.
right.
Janet Jackson, Madonna, Celine Dion, Mariah Carey. There's so many others
Yes.
that are such a big inspiration for the gay community. And we don't even like women.
I know. I think it's a lot of that power and that sexual sort of liberation that a lot of them sort of express. Of course, many of them also are huge LGBTQ plus icons because they have used their power and their influence to, promote gay rights, especially when marriage equality was a big issue and it still
Yes.
is in some areas, and that could be taken away from us at any point. And so, those people like Madonna, Lady Gaga, who I think of immediately when I think of, queer
Mm-hmm.
icons, really stepped out of their comfort zone and put themselves at risk to support our community. And then even the ones that really haven't maybe done as much, they still feel like icons because, again, just expressing themselves authentically
Mm-hmm.
in an area or a place that, music and pop culture can be so controversial, so
Yes.
subjective. You put yourself out there to get critiqued. And I think sometimes when you're growing up gay, you feel like you're also doing the same thing. You're putting yourself out there to get critiqued, even if you don't want to.
Yes.
And so you have to decide who you want to be. At 9, 10, 11, I was certainly not ready to put myself out there. And it's funny because I went through this phase where I switched from wanting to be the center of attention at like 5, 6, 7, grabbing the microphone,
Wow.
speaking at my mom's wedding, speaking at my stepmom's wedding, like wanting all eyes on me, thinking I could be, something special. And then that 9, 10, 11, 12 age where you're like, oh, puberty starting. I'm starting to try to understand what it is to fit in,
Yes.
to form a group, and maybe I'm not that powerful. Maybe I don't have this strong of a voice. And then you see these powerful women who come out and scream and belt and dance and, get shocking
Yes.
reactions and just ingest it, like let it feed them.
And all eyes on them. Everyone's obsessed with them.
Yes, that dominating energy.
Yes.
And it's contagious. Do you remember a specific, point in your life where you were really leaning into music? Maybe you felt isolated, lonely, or just wanted to kind of, pick yourself up?
I remember early 2000s, I had this cousin who already had an iPod, and iPods in Brazil were very expensive, something that was very rare.
Yeah.
And he introduced me to music,
Yeah.
basically. He introduced me to Mariah Carey, Britney Spears, Nelly Furtado, Gwen Stefani, all these main artists at the time. And he kind of showed me how to download music legally.
Hmm.
So I had many different applications on my Windows that download music. And I got to experience that at early age because I was probably 10, and I was already download all kinds of songs, all kinds of music.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even listen to Brazilian artists at all. I
Wow.
think that's one of the reasons why I learned English so quickly,
Yeah.
because I was obsessed with American music.
Yeah.
So to me, American music represented a big chunk of my early teen years, because that was my favorite thing to do, to listen to music, to dance in my bedroom alone with my
Hmm.
headphones. It's like you said, it feels liberating. It feels free when you have music and you have this dance beat that you can dance and you can be yourself. Even if it's just in your bedroom, it feels free.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. And I think personally for me, I would always turn to music that was very uplifting and very much like dance, like you can do this, you can get through this. I think I used music really as an antidepressant in many ways
Yes.
growing up. And I had very specific songs I would use or listen to as well. And some people would be like, oh my God, this tape is the same CD you made. Because I would download music too. And I would make so many discs with like the literal
Yes.
same tracks because I had my favorites, right? Even back in the day when I was a big Britney fan, I would only listen to like three or four of her songs, the ones that were like maximum beat, like push you up, like, the big hits.
Yeah.
Because that's what always I used music for. I never would listen to music to like sort of go through sad emotions or process my feelings in a more, mature way. I guess
Hmm.
you can use music for that certainly too. But for me, it was always like my go-to to help pick me up and build me up. I think the gym also was a
Right.
big place where music became a priority for me. Again, you listen to music a lot more growing up than me. I mean, I definitely enjoyed it, but I started really honing in into music at the
At
gym.
the gym.
Do you ever remember that being a big step for you?
To me, I was already into music
Gotcha.
way before the gym, and I always listen to all kinds of music, all kinds of genres. I
Right.
can listen to dance music, but I also like country, alternative, folk, whatever. I listen. And even before going to the gym, I was already on my computer listening to music all day on Windows Messenger, texting everybody.
Yeah.
But obviously, when I started working out, I picked songs that would give me motivation, that would give me energy to go
Right.
through the workout. And obviously, Britney Spears was on my playlist. I was a big fan of hers. And then I remember mid 2000s, Blackout came out. It was my first CD that I ever bought. CDs in Brazil, very expensive too. And I remember we did this trip for my birthday with my family to a city which is an hour away from mine. And they had this bookstore, and in the bookstore they had Blackout, the
Wow.
CD. And it had just came out 2 months before that,
Yeah.
and I asked my parents to buy it. That was my one of my birthday presents.
Yeah.
And I remember on the way back, we were listening to Blackout on repeat. And my dad, he made some comment about how interesting was that I liked Britney Spears and that taste of music. But it's interesting that he liked Cher,
Right.
right? Because basically
Yeah, and what's interesting
the
about
same.
Blackout is Blackout is such an electro-heavy album with a lot of auto-tune, which is really the purpose of the album. So if you were to listen to it back then, everyone was like, "Oh, it's auto-tune. She doesn't sing, she doesn't do anything." But people who actually follow music and really are invested in sort of that more electro side of
Yes.
music understand the difficulty of using your voice as an instrument instead of using it to belt out and hit certain notes because the way she breaks down her music and in Blackout is very similar to how Cher breaks down and
Yes.
Believe in that sort of
Yes.
electro
Auto
use of auto
tune.
tune
Hmm.
is very specific, and so it's kind of funny that that overlap sort of occurs. And again, with music, it's so beyond language. Like your dad didn't know
Yes.
English, but would still love these strong
The
female
production and the
leads.
beat and the songs. And Blackout was a very electro pop, very
Mm,
that genre of dance music. I remember before Blackout coming out, I was downloading all the demos on my computer. I was dying to hear another Britney Spears
yeah.
album because as fans, we were very anxious about
For
her new
sure.
music.
For sure. Yeah, we didn't really know what direction she was going to take. I actually remember watching the VMA performance that everyone says was like her worst
Yes.
performance ever. And it was quite shocking. I think the way that they filmed it, the way that it was all consumed was just kind of not what we expected. But then I remember going to buy the album, specifically Blackout. This is another album I remember purchasing, which is funny because I only remember like two that I
Uh-huh.
actually like was a big moment in my life, but I remember going to Walmart before school
Wow.
started. I think it was I don't know. I want to say it was December 2nd because I know she often releases
Yeah.
albums in December. but I went to Walmart assuming there'd be like a bunch of people there to get the album because when you love a musician or you love their music, you
Yes.
assume everyone else does too.
Right.
So I walk in, I'm like, "Oh, is it already sold out?" And they're like, "Oh no, we haven't put it out yet. It's still in the back." So
Wow.
I was the first person to buy the CD that day at that store.
Incredible.
It's very funny because the same time that rebellious side of my favorite musician was sort of occurring, society wise,
Yes.
I was also taking that same journey
Coincidentally.
towards like being a rebellious teenager. And so yeah, so I feel like music really does guide us and kind of support what we're going through.
Yes, I feel like sometimes music is the soundtrack of our lives, right?
Yeah.
Especially when it matches with what we're going through, the
Yes.
lyrics, the tone. I feel like I had a lot of those times that music and life became one, and I was
Hmm.
listening to music on repeat.
Yep.
Did you ever had iPods like growing up? When
Oh
was
my
your first
goodness.
one?
Yeah, so I had the first iPod, which I used pretty often, but I still loved CDs. I love to burn CDs.
Yes, me
Just something
too.
about using the computer and creating your own sort of
Playlist.
physical though. Like I
Yeah.
love to hold them and I would write like what music was on there and design them. What really got me in regards to the scheme of iPod was the iPod video.
Mm,
Because at that same time I was like transitioning to going to the gym a
yeah.
lot. So I was 15 or 16 and the music was helping, but I would do the treadmill every day because I wanted to stay lean and I thought treadmill was healthy. I mean, that's what you, at least in The Sims, that would be their activity that they would do. And so I started to use the treadmill a lot and I would get super bored or distracted. My attention span was not great there. So I would watch music videos and the iPod
Ah,
video had just come out. So I would always watch Toxic.
right.
I remember I'd watch SOS by Rihanna, which was one of my favorite, first songs that she
Yeah.
came out with. Things to, again, really pick me up and lift me up. I've always gone to music for that. And still to this day in the gym, if you're seeing me walk around, I probably look like I'm listening to like heavy metal, but it's certainly like,
Give me
oops, I
more.
did it again, or give me more. And what's so funny too is, music, like you said, really does sort of help support what you're going through in your life, regardless of where you're at. Yeah, we
Yes.
talk a lot about puberty and what we went through growing up, but even to this moment, to this day, right now, we're in this very dance heavy era. I think it really started in 2022, and every summer it gets sort of revitalized
Yes.
because, again, it's Pride Month, it's hot outside, we've been waiting for this weather all year, and we're ready to dance.
Ready to dance.
And I feel like we really reinitiate too. Our favorite dance songs from the past are always behind us and with
Yes.
us.
Yes, I love it. I love to rediscover songs from the past too, especially from
Yes.
the 90s. Now we're into this vibe of house music from the 90s.
Mhm.
At some point, we were visiting songs from the 80s. Last year,
Mhm.
we actually listened to songs from the 70s. We were
Yes.
doing our disco era
Yep.
and our soul 70s vibe era too. We just like to explore all different genres. You talk about having iPods. I never had any iPod. I never had iPod video, any of that, because it was just too expensive for me as a kid to get one in
Right.
Brazil. But I did have an MP3. I don't know if you
Yeah.
ever seen them here.
I mean, it was either an iPod or MP3. MP3s were a much more affordable option,
Affordable
but
option, but you can only add 12
right.
tracks to it. And I was very attached to mine. I was obsessed, actually. I would listen to those 12 tracks
Wow.
over and over again. It was kind of like a CD
Yeah.
player to me. And I remember there was this one time I was going back from school home and I was robbed.
Oh.
This person in a bicycle robbed me. My MP3, I was 10, 11. I
Wow.
was very, very sad, mostly because they stole my music and I couldn't listen to it anymore. That was the reason why I was the most sad.
I think there's probably a lot of trauma that would have been embedded in my head if I had been robbed at 10. So we'll have to touch back on that topic again. But I can imagine too, I think it's very similar. You used your MP3 like I used a CD because there were usually like 12 songs for my moment
Yes.
that I wanted to listen to on
Yes.
repeat. I couldn't fill an iPod up until even really now. I don't even like save my music like on an iPod or something like that. I go to the same songs over and over again usually, unless there's a new album out like right now we're hitting so much new music, which is incredible. Definitely a great addition to this summer.
Have you ever had a cassette tape before the iPods?
So I would listen to music in my mom's car when I was growing up in the early 90s, and there was just a cassette player. There was no CD
Uh-huh.
player. And I remember putting those in before she got a car that had a CD player, but I don't have a vivid recollection of like using them very often. I think that's more like people probably were born in the 80s that
Hmm.
were older, in the late 80s and early 90s were probably using them, but wasn't much a cassette guy.
Well, in Brazil, technology is behind.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing.
10 years behind, I was using
That's
cassette
cool.
tapes. at 5 years old. And I remember I would record sometimes the songs that were being played on radio.
Wow.
So I remember having Irreplaceable, Say It
On
Right
cassette.
on cassette
That's crazy.
with ads and
Because the radio.
yes,
I love that album. The B-Day Beyonce album was also the same time that like Blackout had
yes.
come out around, and maybe like a year later, but I was still heavily listening to that like crazy. I remember Irreplaceable was like my breakup song. Anytime I was feeling a little down and needed to like belt it out,
Isn't it
my go-to.
funny? We have all those songs about breaking up, about sex, about getting it on, but we are kids, so we don't
Yes.
have any of those emotions yet, but we're
Right.
still feeling the vibe,
Feeling the vibe.
dancing. Sometimes we don't even know what they mean,
Yeah.
and we still love it.
I think the most important thing about music for us right now is how we're using it to bond. I think it's a
Yes.
great activity that we use together because, again, that 5 years now, us being together, I feel that we are constantly trying to find new things to bring us together and do together. We've always liked music and we've always enjoyed sort of having differences of opinion in various aspects of music, but we usually just talk about the things that we both enjoy together. Now we're starting to dive into new artists, new genres of music. You're giving me a lot of education on things that you like, and I get to learn. And again, something we can do together. When we find a great dance song, we put it on a list and we go out in the garage and bang around for 30 minutes, getting some cardio and dancing around. And I think it's a great activity for people out there who may be in relationships
Yeah.
and looking for something new to do together. Try to learn new music. We follow Metacritic a lot. We follow Pitchfork, not because we think that critiquing music is important, but because they give us new options,
Yeah.
new things to check out.
Yeah, there's always reviewing people who you wouldn't usually find on Apple Music or on
Right.
Spotify because now we live in this streaming world
Hmm.
where music is so available, is so abroad, it's
Yeah.
so universal. Everything is there, but it's kind of hard to find because you're only
Hmm.
gonna find the most streamable songs.
Yep.
You're only gonna see the top one. Only gonna see the songs that have the most plays,
Exactly.
which sometimes that's not what you're looking for. Sometimes you wanna listen to the deep cuts. Sometimes you
Yeah.
want to see the things that are not in the mainstream. So I think it's interesting to expand and try new music, and maybe you're gonna find something that you never heard before, and you
Hmm.
might love it.
Just like we just found an unreleased Britney track
Yes.
because I randomly was like, there's got to be more from the Blackout era. It's called Pull Out. It's highly explicit, highly sexual, and not something that you would expect from Britney,
Yes.
especially in her past. But it reminds me a lot of the Brat album,
Yes.
specifically the song Guess, which, if you've heard that, is also explicit and quite sexual. But those are the kind of vibes that you
Yes.
can, get into when you find new music. And it's a journey, and that's really what I love the most about music is, again, the relationship we get to form with it. And I look back in the past and think about how I used to find music before, and MySpace was so
Yes.
big. You could go to someone you thought was interesting's profile, they'd have like their song up
What they're
on their
listening
page, what
to.
they're listening to, and it would constantly change. But I felt like in that era it was also really important to be finding music that no one heard of or
Right.
had experienced before, so you could be like, oh, this is mine, this is,
Mm-hmm.
my baby. And then you would share it with your friends, and that's how you would learn new music. Now, like you mentioned, if you look on the charts, it's just, what's the most commonly played. You don't get to
Yes.
see what, your favorite people are listening to, which I think was always kind of guiding me towards new music.
It was
But
almost like music was the community back then, and
yeah.
now music it's kind of like it's there, but you just don't know where to start because there's so many options. There's just so much music out there.
Yep.
And if you don't know much about music, you can get lost
Yeah,
because
there's so many options.
yes.
But what is your experience with music? What has your journey been like? Did you use it a lot when you were younger to help get through tough times like we did? Do you still try to infuse it in your life every day to dance a little bit? We'd love to hear from you. What are your favorite tracks? Again, one of the previous videos we asked what people were listening to or favorite house music or dance music. Thank you so much for those comments. We've been going
Yes.
through all of them and trying to listen to everything. It's hard, but it's also so enjoyable for us. So those comments mean so much. So please leave them below.
Please send us much, much more because we love to hear new music. We are dancing
Yes.
to all of them that you guys already recommended. And thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, like, share, drop a pen. Do anything you want.
Yeah, if you have questions too about our relationship or things you think we should talk about in the future, we like to see those comments too. So please leave them below. We'll get to those so we can continue forming this community. Again, we would love for YouTube to help us form a community that loves music, that is interested in health and fitness, that is interested in relationship content, maybe even some stuff talking about parenthood, which we've just really started. Not that we're ready to be parents yet. But yeah, if you haven't seen those videos, check them out. We look forward to seeing you next week.
And thank you for watching. See you next time.
See you next time. Maybe one day people will think our music interests are important enough to where we can like review music.
Yes.
But I get scared of that because people are very passionate about their
Yes.
favorite artists, which I love, but I don't want to get death threats.
I know. Review music is hard.
Yeah,
What we can do, we can recommend songs that we love.
yeah, maybe we'll do recommendations rather than
Recommendation.
reviews.